Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and welcome back to another pastel tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a nice sunset sky with some lovely silhouette of trees. The reference photo for today's project is in the video description, along with the supplies that I'm using and any other relevant information. If you guys have any questions throughout the live stream, don't hesitate to ask. Happy to answer them. And let's just go ahead and get started. So the first color I'm going to be using is a nice light lavender color. I am of course working on Clairefontaine pastel mat. It is my favorite paper to work on, and I recommend you working on that paper as well. It's a little pricey, but it's worth it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to break this sky up into very, very easy pieces. So I'm going to start with this purple lavender, and if you notice, the top third of the sky is predominantly lavender. So I'm just going to draw kind of a line about 1/3 of the way down the paper. And I'm going to fill that in. You don't have to press hard with pastels, just let the paper do all the work for you. I'm just using regular masking tape on the sides also to protect the edges of my paper and to give me a really, really nice border when I'm all done. So there we go, have a nice lavender color. I want to make sure that I have enough pigment on the paper so that when I blend out, it covers the paper really nicely. Okay, so the next color that I'm going to do is going to be kind of this hot pink, reddish orange color. It's kind of like a bright salmon color. And this color happens where the sun is hitting beneath the clouds and it really lightens them up. This color also happens up here. When you check out the reference photo, you'll see that. But this color starts about 1/3 up the page, and it doesn't quite reach the purple up here. It kind of stops. So I'm just going to sketch it out really quick. It kind of stops about here, and it starts about here. So about 2/3 down the page, and I'm just going to fill this area in with this salmon pink color. For now, we're just going to completely ignore the trees. It's very, very easy to add those trees over top of our sky, so that's what we'll do. We'll just work on our sky, get our clouds in, make sure we have our colors nice and bright and vibrant to make our silhouettes really pop off the page. Do not be afraid of your colors. Go bold. It will make your sky look so much more lively. All right, I'm gonna go back to that lavender purple color really quick. Now that I have this pink laid down, this salmon color laid down, I'm just going to kind of bring these colors together a little bit and apply some lavender over top of that edge, just a little bit. Now I'm going to go back to my salmon color. Now you don't see a lot of the sky down here, but there is sky behind the trees, and we just want to make sure that we don't leave it blank. We don't want the white of the paper showing through. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to add some of this bright pink down here. This is where some of the clouds will be sneaking down in the horizon a little bit. And I also want to give a quick shout out to my generous patron that supplied me with today's reference photo, Terry. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the photo, and I hope that you're happy to see a tutorial of the photo you sent me. All right, now that I have that laid down, I'm going to grab white, and I don't want to leave this paper blank without any pastel on it, and it is actually white, so I'm just going to use my white pastel. And you're not really going to see much showing up here, but I want to protect that paper. I don't want to leave it blank. And the white is good for blending out the edges here of our salmon color to just get the sky nice and soft. So I'm going to apply some yellow. I mean some white. We will be applying some yellow. Add some white down here in the corners a little bit. Notice that I'm working horizontally with my sky. It really helps to hide any of the kind of imperfections that we generally make when applying colors. We're also going to blend horizontally. It really helps hide all of those things in the sky much better, because any of the horizontal lines just end up kind of appearing as clouds, whereas if you go vertically, it's really hard to convince people that you're painting a sky. Now I'm going to use a really light yellow, and I'm going to get, this is like a transitionary color between the white and the salmon. So I'm going to just apply some of this yellow right at the edge of our salmon and white colors on both sides, the top and the bottom. Doesn't require too much. And now I'm going to take my soft tool. I also have a link for this in the description, and I'm just going to blend everything out. Try to cover the paper best I can. You don't have to press real hard with this soft tool. Just let the excess pastel powder kind of glide across the paper. If any point you see some specks of the paper showing through, that just means that we'll have to apply another layer of color. That way we can cover the paper completely. We're going to want to cover the paper completely before we move on to our trees. So you can see plenty of little specks in there. Now I'm going to come into my salmon color, and I'm just going to work right on that line that separates those two colors so that they can start blending together. Again, I'm not pressing hard at all, just very lightly on the paper. There's no need to try to force the pastels to move. If there's enough pastel on the paper, it will move all by itself. And now I'm going to blend that edge where the yellow's at, right in there, just to soften that line. And I'm going to just come right into the white now. Blend that white out. The paper gets very smooth as you apply layers. If you tape the edges, which I do recommend with the masking tape, always work away from the edge so that you don't push any of the pastel dust underneath the tape. Now just finish off blending this bottom row of color. Very simple. All right, I know our sky's not looking like too much, but it will soon enough. I'm going to go back to our first lavender color, that light lavender color. I'm just going to apply another light coat of that color in our sky. Remember, I want to cover up the entirety of the paper. Very light pressure. All right, now grabbing the salmon color again, I'm going to do the same thing. Apply it right on the edge of that lavender color. That way I have plenty of pigment to make that transition nice and smooth. Come down here, apply some more of that salmon color. go. I'm going to grab the white now. Don't forget about the white. I'm just going to layer a little bit more white right in there, down here in the corners a little bit. And then grab our very, very light yellow. By the way, the pastel set that I am using today is the Schminke 120 set. I believe the set I have listed in the description is the Rembrandt soft pastels. But over the years I've learned that when it comes to working with soft pastels, it doesn't make a huge difference. So I recommend finding the set that works for your budget and just collecting your colors, because they all pretty much work the same with only a very small degree of difference. Alright, now I'm going to go back and blend. I'm going to wipe off the dust a little bit on my brush here so that I don't bring too much red into the lavender here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to start blending it out very, very softly. The paper that I'm using, again, is Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. If you guys have any questions for me to see them easily, just tag me. Tag me in the chat and it will highlight your question. You can, of course, always do super chat as well. That one's very obvious to me. Alright, sky is looking very, very soft now. Rather plain, but soft. And that's a good starting point to start adding in our other colors, and then we can get into the texture and creating the clouds and all of that. Alright, moving down into this transition. I'm going to kind of work back and forth a little bit over this line to get that salmon and lavender color blended together nice and smooth. No need to rush with your blending. Take your time. The more time you spend on it, the better it's going to look anyway, so there's absolutely no reason to rush. You can also blend with just your finger if you don't have one of these soft tools. These soft tools, like I said, are linked in the description. They're made by Pastel, and they're really, really great tools. The difference with blending with this as opposed to blending with your finger is that since this spongy material is all porous, it actually absorbs a lot of the excess dust from the pastels themselves, because you'll know very, very soon working with pastels that they do create quite a bit of dust. And that dust can bother some people, but these sponge tools, they pick up a lot of that dust, and so you get a lot less of it when you blend with these tools as opposed to with your finger. So if the dust bothers you, then I recommend switching to the soft tools. You'll have much better luck with those. Get your sky very, very soft. The softer you get it, the more your trees are going to pop off the paper, because the sky is going to be like blurry and out of focus a little bit, whereas the trees are going to have a really nice sharp contrast to them. because not only can you complement objects by increasing their value and their saturation, but you can also do it with just texture alone. So the more texture you bring to an object, the more it stands out against a lesser textured surface. And so getting your sky nice and soft is very important for doing that. All right, now we are going to switch colors here. I am going to grab our salmon color once again, and I'm going to start adding a few little lines that are going to indicate the underside of our clouds up in the lavender section. So one of the things that I want you to recognize is the direction that these clouds are coming. They kind of start over here and they gradually get higher as they're moving to the left. So they're kind of at an angle like this, which seems a little odd, but I can assure you it will look okay in the end. What I would recommend doing is starting here and just kind of giving yourself a guideline, kind of like this. Just follow that line. And what happens is these clouds, they kind of fan down like this. So as they get closer to this line, they get flatter. So I'm just going to draw a few little guidelines here to help you visualize that better. So they kind of go like this and like this. As I get up here, I'm going to break them a little bit. There. So they kind of do this thing, kind of like that. See how that goes? Now I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to scrape. I'm going to do just little scrapes of my color. But I'm going to make sure that I follow the direction of these lines here. All right? So I'm going to follow that perspective. Just going to scrape in a little bit of color, very loosely. Not drawing any in particular clouds. We're going to blend all this out. It's going to look really nice. I'm going to get a little bit looser up here. Focus this color a bit more down at the bottom. So less clouds, more clouds. There. All right, now let's see. I'm going to grab another lavender color. So this is very close to the lavender color that we used, but it's just a shade lighter. So it's a little bit lighter than that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to follow the directions that I laid out, but I'm going to apply this color just below my salmon color. This is going to be where like the sky starts to break through a little bit. Again, you don't have to be exact here. Just kind of follow your guidelines and go with the flow. And unlike how we applied the salmon color, I'm going to apply this color a little bit more up in the top right corner, and as I get closer to the horizon line, I'm going to apply less of it. So only a little bit of it will show up down here. And then I'll apply a bit more as I get closer to this corner. All right, let's see here. I am going to take a color to do some shading with, and you know what? I think I'm just going to go with a nice grape purple. So this color, don't use too much of this color. This color is going to go behind the clouds. because usually the shadow of a cloud is on the bottom because the sun is above it. But when you're dealing with sunrises and sunsets, the sun is actually below the clouds and it's lighting the clouds up from the bottom. So that's why we put the highlight underneath the underneath the salmon color. Well, we're going to use the dark purple to create the shadows of the clouds. So we want to put those on top of the salmon color. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of this behind my salmon color. And you don't have to be too exact. There's nothing exact going on here. So don't stress out too much. Just keep your hand loose, keep your colors loose, and just apply them where you feel like they should show up. We're going to blend this out, and we have plenty of room to make adjustments with our colors and apply more layers. So don't get too hung up on the details. Come down here towards this salmon color. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our lavender color that we started with, and I'm going to bring the lavender color into the salmon color, just like we brought the salmon color into the lavender color. So these two parts kind of flip-flop. So the lavender color comes down into the salmon color now. And this is just going to remain nice and horizontal. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of this and break up the clouds. Again, just make a few scrapes. Your precision is completely unnecessary. As long as you get the colors right, you get the texture right, it's going to look like clouds, so don't you worry about that. Maybe bring in a little bit of lavender down here. Have a cloud sneaking in down here in the corner. All right, now we are going to blend our clouds. Now, originally we had kind of stayed horizontal. With these clouds, we're going to follow the direction. So we're just going to fan them down in the direction that we established. Very, very light touch. The colors are going to fade away and kind of blend into each other. And then we'll apply some more colors. And we'll just build up a layer until we get our clouds looking the way that we want. For those of you that might be just now coming into the live stream, I have my supplies listed in the description, and there is also a link to the reference photo that I am using. So if you want to follow along, you can download that reference photo for free. And I would love to see the results of this, results of your pastel painting. So if you do follow the tutorial and you post it on Instagram or Facebook or whatnot, feel free to tag me in it. I'd love to see it. You can also join the Unmask Art family Facebook page. I have a link for that in the description. You can always ask questions and get inspired by all the lovely artists that we have in the family there. Just going to keep on blending. make my sky nice and soft till those clouds almost just become a blur. Keep everything nice and soft. You don't want any texture in the sky. None of that grainy pastel texture. Everything should be soft and smooth. That's what we're looking for. I'm going to do little circles now, just to help soften that texture a little bit. Very, very light pressure. And then blend it horizontally again. Just wherever you see it needed. All right, now let's go back to, let's go back to some purple. Yeah, let's add some more shadows to our sky. So I'm going to grab that purple color again. It's just a nice grape purple. And now I'm going to be a little bit more precise as to where I'm putting these shadows. So I'm just going to kind of use the reference photo more as a guide rather than a rule. And I'm just going to do little tiny circles, make my clouds a bit thicker. Just a little bit of purple here and there. Again, I'm following the general direction that we established with our perspective lines in the sky. So don't ever lose sight of that. The second you break the rules of perspective, it's going to be disorienting to the viewer. And, you know, most people, they might not be able to recognize what the problem is, but they'll know there's a problem. So never break the rules of perspective. So don't lose track of the direction of those vanishing lines that I drew in the sky previously. You also don't need to get too hung up with all of these details, because remember, we're going to put a bunch of trees in front of all of this, so it's not really going to show up as much as you think. Sorry, I didn't change color. I just wanted to put a little bit of the purple down here inside the salmon color. There we go. Now I'm going to grab white, and I'm going to bring in just a bit of white and get those highlights in the sky a bit brighter. This is going to be where the sky shows through a little bit, in case you were wondering. These aren't cloud highlights, this is the actual sky showing through the clouds. Just little scribbles. I'm not drawing any particular shapes. Just tiny little scribbles. That's all it takes. All right, I'm going to blend that out before moving on with any other color. So I'm just going to start up here, just do some gentle blending. You can see how delicately I'm even holding the blending tool here. Very, very light pressure. Barely letting the sponge even touch the paper. No need to be heavy-handed with this medium. It's so delicate. It's also very forgiving, so it's quite difficult to make a real mistake with pastels. They're such a forgiving medium that you can almost correct anything that you mess up the first go. So don't be afraid of your colors here in the sky. So question regarding the Koh-i-Noor pastels. I've never used Koh-i-Noor pastels, so I don't yet have an opinion on them. I've heard people talking about them, heard that they were quite good, but I think I may have spent enough money for now on my pastels. I have quite the collection of pastels, as many of you know. And right now I'm using the Schminke, and I am quite enjoying them. They're really a lovely set of pastels. Blend out that last little bit of purple I added down here in the salmon color. Try not to cover your salmon color too much. You want that bright orange red showing through there. It's a very important color. Thank you very much, Artsy Studio, for the compliment. I appreciate that. Again, remember not to rush. I'm in no rush here, and you shouldn't be either. Just get your sky looking the way that you want. Let's see here. I think I'm going to go with a little bit more white in the sky. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change it up. I'm going to do a little bit of blue. I'm going to go for this really nice kind of foam greenish blue. It has just a touch of green in it. It's very, very bright blue. And I'm going to try to get the sky showing through my clouds just a little bit better. So I'm going to be a bit more precise here, again, with my application. Just brighten up the sky a little bit more. One of the things you'll notice with this sky is that these lines aren't perfectly straight. So even though I was stressing the importance of following that perspective, these lines aren't perfectly straight. So you just want the general direction to follow the perspective. If you make your clouds too straight, they'll look a little artificial. So don't be afraid to give them a little twist and a turn. Yeah, I like this blue color. It's a little bit more lively than just plain white. And let's see, before I blend that out, let's go back to our purple, I think. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the purple, and I'm going to do the same thing, just kind of bring in a little bit of the shadows coming in on our clouds. Give them a bit more character. Just kind of loosely putting in some shadows. The more you kind of focus this color, the deeper those shadows are going to be, because each time that we've blended these colors out, you know, they kind of get contaminated by all the other surrounding colors that we've applied. And in the case of our dark purple, it tends to get much lighter. And in the case of our sky, the white that we've been using, it tends to get darker and not be as bright. And colors in general, when they start to blend together, they get a little less vibrant. So you have to apply them over and over again to really get that vibrancy to show through. And to get your colors to stick in one spot a little bit more, instead of sweeping, just tap them. So I'm going to tap my purple. I'm going to start off with my purple, and to kind of start the blending of it so that I get rid of that grainy texture, I'm just going to tap the purple. That way it stays there and it doesn't really get any lighter from the other colors. So just gently tapping it. That way those clouds, those shadows of the clouds, they just stay there. I feel like it's only taken about 10 minutes to get here. And I could just spend all day looking at this sky. Alright, now that those clouds are tapped in, I'm just going to wipe off the tip of my brush a little bit. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the light blue that I added. So I'm just going to tap it in. Not going to blend it yet. The sky show through. You can see when I tap that light blue, it kind of fades away into the rest of the sky. So we might even apply a little bit more of it, just to really get it to show through. Alright, now I'm just going to let my brush kind of glide over the paper very, very lightly. Get rid of any of the excess grain where I applied those colors, both the purple and the blue. It's okay if some texture shows through, as long as it doesn't distract your eye. You know, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to do the finishing touches on the sky. And the color that I am going to use is our original salmon color. And I'm just going to come up into the sky and let this color shine through on the bottoms of our clouds. This is the highlight color, believe it or not. Just let that come through. And again, it's going to be less up here and a little bit more over here, so let's apply some of it generously over here. So a little bit more over here, and then just touches of it as you get closer to this top right corner. Highlight a little bit of our small clouds hiding up here. There, now we have some nice cloud highlights. And just brush those very, very delicately to get rid of the excess grain. All right. Do your last bit of blending any way that you want. Remember, the sky, it's going to be pretty important in this picture. It takes up a lot of real estate on your paper. So don't move on too quickly. Don't move on too quickly to the trees just because you want to get to the trees, okay? Take your time with the sky. Really make sure that you like the way that it looks. Just doing a last bit of blending here, making sure that I like it. I feel like I want a bit more white to show through on my sky, so I'm going to take the time, I'm going to take the extra time to come in here and add just some pure white, really make that sky in the background pop through a little bit more. Very, very bright. Just kind of squiggle some holes in the sky, holes in the cloud. That's what it is. These are little holes with this overcast of clouds. Let that white show. Create that nice separation between the individual clouds and make it interesting. Remember, follow your perspective lines. I'm still using that. All right, that white looks much better. Let's see if I can blend it out without losing too much of it. I stress the importance of getting your sky the way that you want it before moving on to the trees, because it's going to be very, very difficult to make changes to your sky if you see something wrong after you add your trees. It is not going to be an easy task for you to fix your sky. In fact, it'd be easier to just start over if you want to change your sky after adding the trees in. All right, I am satisfied with that. So now we get to the last bit, and that is to add in our trees. So I wasn't sure if I was going to use any of my pastel pencils, but last minute I decided, you know what, why not at least have one? So I have my black Carbothello pencil, and I'm going to use this to do the initial mapping out of where my trees are placed, and then I will also use it to add all those little details and all those tiny little branches in throughout the trees to really give them a great sense of detail and texture so that they stand out from the sky even more. So the way to approach this, instead of trying to go from like the left side to the right side, instead focus on the dominating features of the trees. For instance, right here, about one third from the right, you have two pine trees, and let's just draw up a line here, and it goes halfway, right? It goes about halfway. So I'm just going to draw a little line here, like that. That's one of them, and you'll notice that it's got a sibling right next to it. So I'm just going to draw another line. Don't have to be too precise about this, so don't worry about it. The next really dominating tree is right smack dab in the middle, and this one goes up about here. It's like right in the middle. It just dominates the center of our sky and our paper. Just gonna put a line just like that. Very easy. The next one is about a third here, and this one's kind of a tall, skinny one, and it doesn't have much leaves on it. And it is about the same height. It's just right there, right? And then we have the really tall one. And this one has kind of two branches that start about here. So I'm going to draw the top. It's got a branch that ends like right up here near the top. So I'm just going to draw a line down, just like this. And then its larger branch comes down from here, and I'm just going to go like this. And I'm going to just meet somewhere in the middle, just like that. So now we kind of have a better framework for all of our trees in general. It gives us a little bit, it's like measuring kind of. It gives us a little bit more detail that we can work off of. So now I'm just going to grab my black pastel pencil, or my black pastel. And I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to thicken up this tree trunk, just like that, just using the edge. I'm just going to use the edge and kind of create the branches coming out from it. What I'm doing is I'm placing it on the edge and I'm rolling it. That's how I'm getting these lines here. And I really only do this near the top. And then as I come down, I just start scraping it a little bit. Let's try to get the thickness of it. So the thickness is about here, down at the bottom, and then just kind of creates this cone shape. It gets smaller as you get towards the top. So I'm just going to do one side at a time and kind of scrape in little branches. No precision is needed on these trees. Just kind of make sure that you're creating the general shape of it, and don't make your branches completely uniform. Make them random. You know, some of them grow up a little bit, some of them grow down a little bit. Just kind of scribble a little. Put in the tree trunk a little bit heavier. We have a lot of pastel already on the page, so it's going to take a little bit of effort to cover it up, because we're not going to be doing any blending. We want all the texture to show through. It's going to take a little bit of layering. Just like the sky, you're not going to want to rush your trees either. Now you can see the importance of making sure that we added plenty of color to the sky all throughout here, because now all those little spots that you can see through the tree, you can see the sky again. And that's a very important feature to making the trees look like they belong in the scene. All right, so that's one tree down. Let's go to this one now. Again, the width is probably about here, and it just kind of goes like that. Don't be afraid to cover up the sky. Let your branches of the tree be very, very random. Make sure that tree trunk shows up. All right, this tree, so the line that I drew up is the tree that has no leaves, but if you see there's actually a tree right here beside it and right here. And both of those ones are the evergreen trees, so just going to, again, make my shape. We'll just say it's about this wide. So create my cone shape. Maybe it's a little bit wider down here. Same thing with this. Just create my cone shape. Scribble in some random tree branches. We'll get to the little details when we finish these evergreen trees, and then we'll grab the pencil again and we'll do the the real thin branches going out everywhere. All right, there we go. Let's see. We have this tall tree here. We have this shorter evergreen tree right in the middle, about right here. So let's just do this. It's a bit thinner, so it's about like that. And you don't have to be perfect with the size of the trees. Trees have plenty of diversity in sizes, so just get it looking like a tree and you'll be in good shape. All right, let's go ahead and add another short tree right here. And let's see, there's a bigger tree, kind of like this. It's got a tree branch going out like this. This one's more of a traditional leaved tree. So I'm just going to create some framework here for branches. Nothing in particular. And I'm just going to kind of, instead of rolling, I'm going to do a bit of tapping to create some leaves. So a bit more of a tapping motion than a scraping motion. Just let those leaves build up until I get some nice coverage. We got a few shorter trees here and there, So put some leaves on those down here at the bottom. This whole corner here is actually just completely filled in, so don't be afraid to just fill in those large areas where you can. You know what? There's a second tree kind of right here. Nice little evergreen tree. Scribble in a few branches. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to go back to the pencil and we're going to do some fun little details. So let's see, right beside this tree there's a tree that kind of comes up, does a little Y, something like that. It's a bit thicker down at the bottom. And one of the things you'll notice that I'm always using my pencil like this so that I keep my tip nice and sharp. And I'm just going to slowly turn it. I'm going to keep turning my pencil to keep it nice and sharp so that I can do those little details later on. So we have that tree. We've got another tree right in here. A little bit thicker down at the bottom. Whole bunch of little plants down here, so I'm just going to add a few lines, something like grass, bushes coming up. It's hard to tell exactly what it is. Just a bunch of little lines coming across. Let's see, we got a tall tree peeking out right here. Give it some branches. Not doing any heavy detailing right now, just kind of getting the framework for all of our details. That way I can keep my pencil nice and sharp. Let's put another tree off to this side. Alright, let's do this tree. We got a tree coming up right here. Make sure that you give it a little bit of a thicker trunk down near the bottom. Otherwise it will look a little awkward. So the pencil sharpener that I use for my pastel pencils, because if you've used pastel pencils, you know they can be a little difficult, to say the least, when it comes to sharpening them. And I am using a Jacquard electric sharpener that seems to be more available in Europe than other parts of the world, but it does work very, very well, and it still works. Been it's been over a month now, and it still works really, really well. I bought a few blade replacements for it, and I have changed the blade one time after sharpening literally every pencil that I own. Probably twice. So about 2,000 pencils, give or take 500 or so. Alright, let's just give this tree here some nice little details. And again, I haven't even really gotten into the real details. This is just the basics. This is just the minor details. It's like the cousin of details. You can probably drive yourself a bit crazy with the amount of branches that you could potentially give your trees here. I recommend just having fun with it, though. Don't go too crazy. Give the ground here a little bit of grass and randomness. Randomness is good. It's all over in nature. Make sure you avoid patterns. That's probably one of the most difficult things to actually learn as an artist, is randomness. See, our brains are hardwired for patterns. We love patterns. And so when we start drawing and trying to make trees and flowers and grass and all of that, our brains, since they're hardwired for patterns, they just keep making patterns, even when our goal is to not have patterns. So it can be a little frustrating at times, but with time, you'll get there. You'll be able to do randomness. One of the more difficult aspects of art to learn is randomness. Alright, time to do these big trees. When doing your trees, it's more important to get the overall general shape than it is to add a whole lot of details. This tree kind of sticks out in the sky, and so to get it to look like a tree, notice that the top point here, it kind of creates this triangular shape. So keep that in mind when you're adding your branches. So the tips of your branches, they should kind of form this triangle at the top that kind of goes down like this. So just keep that in mind. You can see this line here. If you follow the tops of my trees, if you take a look at the reference photo, you'll notice that same line. So just keep those things in mind when you're working on your trees. Sometimes we get caught up in all the details and we miss the broad picture. You know, we get in there, we're looking at our tree and we're like, oh well, let me add a branch like this, and oh, let me add a twig, and here's another little twig, and you get caught up in all these teeny tiny little details that you end up making something that doesn't quite look like a tree. It just looks like a bunch of random lines. So make sure you're paying attention to the big picture also. That will help you a lot in making your trees look like trees. That's the secret. It also doesn't hurt to make sure you add a little bit of weight variation to your lines. And by weight, I mean the thickness of your branches. For instance, here, have a look at this branch. It's all exactly the same width. So if I just start here at where it connects to the tree and I just add a little bit of weight to it, now it magically just looks more like a branch. It's very simple, very simple. And those are those very subtle things. Even with a tree that is only this size, that really, truthfully, doesn't actually have a lot of detail to it. But adding those subtle changes in line weight, it makes it look more tree-like. Having a billion details and teeny tiny little twigs drawn all over the place isn't what makes a tree look like a tree. Now that we have our trees all laid out, we can go back through and just spend all day sitting here drawing little twigs and just making our trees look impossibly detailed. And once you feel like you have enough twigs and branches, just take a step back from your painting and see where you might want to add a little bit more leaves. Give your trees a few loose leaves here and there. And I'm just using the face of my pastel. I'm just kind of pressing in a few leaves. And if you don't want to press, you can actually grab a craft knife. You can grab a craft knife. Many of you know this is one of my favorite techniques. And you can just literally just scrape some leaves. Right onto the paper. You can be as generous with it as you want. I didn't intend to do this actually, so I'm gonna have to grab some glassine paper to smooth this out. or to press that in. And then of course you can give a little bit more branches in there. A few more branches coming through. Something like that. Alright, I'm gonna grab some glassine paper really quick. And so all I need to do is lay my glassine paper over top of my painting, press in my tiny little leaves. Doesn't take any pressure at all. Just wherever I put those little leaves, I'm just gonna take my glassine paper and rub my finger across it like this. Alright, so that completes this painting. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part, and that is to peel up the tape on the sides and see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and start up here on the top. You're probably going to want to do this with cleaner fingers than mine. Last piece of tape. Alright everyone, there you have it. This painting is all complete. I hope that you guys liked today's live tutorial. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it with all of your pastel friends, and probably some of those that aren't into pastels. Share it with everyone. But thanks so much for coming by and hanging out. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And also, I do live pastel tutorials every Tuesday.